In the movie industry, effects simulations are usually broken up into two major categories: effects and character effects, or CFX. In fact, they're usually two entirely separate departments with completely different artists assigned to each task. When talking about effects, we're usually referring to everything from fluids, particles, destruction, smoke, and pyro. So your typical water splashes, magical effects, buildings crumbling, explosions, and everything in between. Whereas CFX is any kind of simulation that's specific to characters and creatures. So hair and fur, muscles, clothes, and often crowd simulations are lumped into this category as well. In this video, we'll mostly be focusing on the effects side of things, since I've already covered the topic of cloth simulation, and I'll likely cover the rest of CFX in the future. When trying to create a new effect, the general concept is to ingest as much reference as possible, and from there break it down to its individual elements. For instance, if you were to look at some footage of a real-life explosion, you'd likely notice a few individual parts that you could isolate into their own layers, usually an emissive core that turns to smoke, a shockwave of dust that expands outwards radially, some trails that fly out into a point, and of course some debris and particles flying out from the ground or whatever was exploded. And that same train of thought could then be applied to almost any effect, really. In a massive water effect, you might have a base ocean pass, some individual splash passes, a white water pass, and so on. In a building destruction, you'd notice the actual large chunks of concrete falling, some rebar or wood and glass potentially, and small debris and large dust clouds, each of which can be broken out and simulated and rendered individually, to later be composited back together. On top of their exceptional technical mastery of the software, what separates a good effects artist from a great one is their eye, specifically how adept they are at being able to mimic the real-life motion of those material. For instance, when simulating fluids, you'll often have exposed parameters for things like viscosity and surface tension. And when simulating smoke and fire, you'll often have access to things like temperature, buoyancy, and cooling rate. Think of an effects TD as an air traffic controller, flipping switches and dialing in trajectories from the safe distance, except instead of talking to pilots and managing planes, they're talking to software, blowing stuff up, and making blue spirit animals come out of magic wands.